It is said that we should smile, for the worst is yet to come. Motivational speakers have never been my favorite people, but I really hated it when they were right. After all the madness I had witnessed over the past few weeks, my mother still forced me to attend the funeral of a guy I never liked. For 3 agonizing hours, I had to listen to those bastards shamelessly lie about Julian's so-called achievements. But you know what? I might not be that religious, but even I know that we should never lie in front of a holy altar. Just a few minutes after Julian was offered as lunch to the sharks, his mourners got their wish of seeing him again by dying in the exact same way he did and leaving that ship a literal bloody mess. No one understood what exactly happened, but we all knew that our narcissistic governor would blame the downtowners. So, stick around for the sensational narration of the 7th chapter of Dynasty and witness how this maniac reacted to the mass assassination of his favorite people. The Highborns' superiority complex was beginning to fade away after the death of Julian and the tragedy at his funeral. I didn't care for most of the mourners, but it was hard to ignore that innocent people, including children, were caught in the crossfire. Just like everyone else, I wanted to uncover what could transform a normal human being into this unrecognizable creature. Meanwhile, the once bustling streets of Ironwood were now almost deserted. The Highborns secluded themselves in their mansions, reflecting on their life choices. Some even began to suspect that a higher power was punishing them for their past transgressions towards the downtowners. However, we didn't buy that reasoning. My parents and their team did all they could to isolate the cause that took out Julian and his mourners. In the meantime, the media subtly portrayed Komen as the most probable culprit. Technically, they had a point because Komen hated the Highborns and led an anti-government protest, but as guilty as he sounded, he didn't have the resources to fabricate a toxin that could do this in seconds. Unfortunately, resources weren't the only thing he lacked. He also had a serious deficiency in common sense. Amidst the ongoing turmoil in Ironwood, I expected a normal person to postpone the protest to a later date, but Komen just didn't know how to read the room. With a pathological display of overconfidence, he not only ordered the protests to continue, but actually told his people to march towards the Capitol building where the office of the governor was located. Theoretically, this was a good and constitutional technique for fighting for their rights, but not when you are ruled by a psychopath. The downtowners might have displayed one of the most peaceful and disciplined protests, but the governor didn't give a fuck. Under his orders, the police, or whoever these guys were, unleashed an ancient Malandorian fighting style known as fog and fury. This military-grade technique was originally reserved for protection against highly dangerous external forces by blurring the vision of the attackers, then taking them down during their blinded state. But for some weird reason, the governor decided to treat these unarmed protesters as dangerous terrorists. Therefore, in just a few minutes, more trucks carrying the so-called police sped to the riot scene and shot multiple tear gas canisters towards the peaceful and unarmed downtowners. But that wasn't all. Military-grade helicopters flew above the city and launched an unknown gas that not only irritated the eyes of the protesters, but also caused chemical burns upon contact with the skin and light clothing. This combination of the unknown gas and tear gas created a thick fog in the streets of Ironwood, causing severe eye and respiratory irritation, as well as chemical burns. Once the downtowners were weak and writhing in pain, the second phase of fury began. Without hesitation, these harbingers of doom maliciously struck the downtowners with heavy metallic truncheons and batons. With a calculated fury, They aimed for the limbs and spine, intending to permanently cripple the protesters so they would never stand to demonstrate again. Some of these enforcers got too carried away by aiming for the head and cracking skulls of people already suffering from partial thickness second-degree burns. Some died, a few escaped, but most were left nursing serious injuries. As the brutality of the assault reached its peak, the wailing sirens of ambulances and the whirring rotors of medevac choppers piercing the air brought a glimmer of hope to the downtowners. In that hostile atmosphere, medical personnel in gas masks bravely entered the chaos to save whomever they could. To my surprise, these guys didn't attack the medics. They therefore backed down as these brave souls carefully lifted the wounded onto stretchers and loaded them into ambulances and choppers for proper medical attention. Those who died were respectfully covered in white sheets, then transported to the morgue. At the hospital, the medics worked tirelessly to relieve the suffering of the injured downtowners, while morgue attendants prepared the bodies for preservation. Amidst this somber duty, one of the attendants found Asha's photograph among the belongings of an elderly woman who had died in the protest. Recognizing the photo from the recent mall incident, the attendants swiftly notified my parents. It didn't take long to identify the woman as Asha's grandmother, who was a frail, osteoporotic woman whose life was cruelly extinguished for standing up for what was right.